The wind moved slowly across the empty land of Outpost 17. The planet was cold and dry. Dust covered the metal buildings like a thin gray blanket. The sky above was pale and silent. Nothing moved except small machines and tired workers finishing their long shift. That was when they saw him, a human. He was alone, far from the main station. He was not building a machine. He was not repairing a ship. He was not carrying weapons. He was digging. The aliens stopped walking. They stared at him from a distance. Humans were known for many things. They built fast ships. They made strong weapons. They solved hard problems. But this human was on his knees in the dirt, using a simple shovel, and the hole he was digging was small, very small. One alien worker tilted his head. "Is he planting something?" he asked. Another shook his head. "No, that hole is too deep." Human did not look up. He kept digging slowly, carefully. His movements were quiet and respectful, not angry, not rushed, careful. More workers gathered. They whispered to each other. Did someone important die? No ceremony was announced. There was no accident report. One of the older aliens stepped forward. He had seen humans before. He had worked with them. He knew they were emotional beings. Still, this felt strange. He called out, his voice echoing across the dry land. "Human, what are you doing?" The human stopped for a moment. He rested both hands on the shovel. His shoulders were covered in dust. He looked tired, but his eyes were calm. He did not answer right away. Instead, he climbed out of the small hole and walked a few steps away. That was when the aliens saw it, a small shape wrapped in clean white cloth. The wind tried to lift the edges, but the human gently pressed it down. Silence fell over the group. One alien stepped closer. His voice became softer. "Who is that?" The human looked at the small, wrapped body. His voice was low but clear. "She was alone," he said. The aliens looked at each other. Recognition slowly spread across their faces. The small girl from the lower market levels, the quiet one, the unwanted one. She had no ID chip. One alien muttered. "No registered family," said another. She was not in the system. On this planet, if someone was not registered, they did not officially exist. No records, no benefits, no funeral. If they died, their bodies were removed and erased from files. Clean, simple, efficient. That was the rule. The older alien spoke again. "There are procedures for this." The human's jaw tightened slightly. "Yes," he said. "I know." The wind blew harder now. Dust moved around their feet. One worker crossed his arms. "Why are you digging a grave? Disposal units will handle it." The human looked at him. His eyes were not angry, but they were firm. "She is not waste," he said quietly. The words felt heavy in the cold air. The aliens shifted uncomfortably. One of them asked the question that had been building in all their minds. "Why do you care?" No one else did. The human walked to the wrapped body. He knelt beside it. His hands were rough from the digging, but gentle as he adjusted the cloth. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he answered, "Because she deserved to be remembered." The simple words moved through the group like a slow wave. Remembered. Why would memory matter? She had no name in the system, no record, no value. One alien frowned. "She was nothing," he said, without thinking. The human finally looked up sharply. "She was not nothing." His voice did not rise, but it carried weight. "She laughed," he continued. "She tried to sell broken parts to buy food. She was cold every night. She was scared. She was alive." The aliens were quiet now. The human stood and stepped back. Into the hole, he continued digging. Each movement was steady, respectful. The older alien watched closely. "Humans bury their dead," he said slowly. "Yes," the human replied. "Even the weak ones." The human stopped digging again, especially the weak ones, held across the empty land. The sky remained pale and silent. One by one, more workers came closer. They looked at the small grave. They looked at the small body wrapped in white cloth. Something felt different. Strange, uncomfortable. The human climbed out of the hole once more. He examined its depth carefully. Then he nodded to himself. It was ready. He walked toward the small body. The aliens held their breath, and in that quiet moment, every one of them felt the same question burning inside their minds. Why would a human fight so hard, just so someone would not be forgotten? Long before the small grave was dug in the cold dust, the human had first seen her in the lower market of Outpost 17. The lower market was not a nice place. It was dark, crowded, and noisy. Old machines hummed in the corners. Broken parts were stacked in tall piles. The air smelled like oil and rust. Most workers avoided that area. It was where the poor and the unwanted lived. The human was there to buy spare parts for a repair job. He moved through the narrow paths between the stalls, looking at different tools. Traders shouted prices. Small drones floated overhead, scanning goods. That was when he noticed her. She was sitting on the ground beside a cracked wall. A small cloth was spread in front of her. On it were a few pieces of scrap metal, a bent wire, and a broken light chip. No one stopped at her stall. No one even looked at her. She was very small. Her skin was pale blue, and her large eyes watched the crowd carefully. She looked tired and hungry. Her thin arms were wrapped around her knees to stay warm. The human slowed his steps. He watched as a group of workers walked past her. One of them accidentally kicked her scrap pieces. The items rolled into the dust. No one apologized. The girl quickly picked them up, brushing the dirt off with her small hands. She did not complain. She did not cry. She only looked down. The human felt something heavy in his chest. He walked closer and stopped in front of her. She noticed his boots first. Her eyes moved up slowly, and when she saw his face, she flinched. Humans were big compared to her kind. She pulled her scrap closer. As if he might take it, the human crouched down so he would not look so tall. "How much for the light chip?" he asked gently. She blinked in surprise. It seemed like no one had asked her that before. "2 credits. Kisa," she said softly. Her voice was weak, almost like a whisper. The human picked up the chip. It was useless, completely broken. It could not even power a small lamp. Still, he reached into his pocket and placed 5 credits on her cloth. Her eyes widened. "Too much," she said quickly. He shook his head. "Keep it." She stared at the credits as if they were something magical. Then, very carefully, she asked, "Why?" The human thought for a moment. "Because you need it more than I do." She looked at him, confused. No one had spoken to her like that before. Her stomach made a small sound. She quickly covered it with her hands, embarrassed. The human noticed. "Have you eaten today?" he asked. She shook her head. Without another word, he stood up and walked to a nearby food stall. The seller looked surprised when the human bought a warm meal and a small drink. He returned and placed the food in front of her. She stared at it, unsure if it was real. "For me?" she asked. "Yes." She looked around as if someone might take it away. When no one did, she slowly picked up the food and took a small bite. Her eyes grew wide. It was warm. It was real food. She began eating faster, but the human gently said, slowly, "You'll get sick." She nodded and forced herself to eat more carefully. After a few minutes, she finished the meal. She looked at the empty container and then at him. "Thank you," she said quietly. "What's your name?" the human asked. She hesitated. Then she shook her head. I don't have one. The human frowned. Everyone has a name. She pointed to her chest. No chip, no record, no name. On this planet, names were given through the system. Without an ID chip, a person had no official identity. The human felt that heavy feeling in his chest again. Well, he said slowly, that's not right. She looked at him, curious. What do you mean? He gave her a small, gentle smile. It means someone should still remember you. She tilted her head. Why? The human looked at her for a long moment. Because every life matters, he said. She did not fully understand his words. She felt something warm inside her chest. For the first time in a long while, someone had looked at her like she was important. And from that day on, whenever the human walked through the lower market, a small blue girl waited for him with quiet. After that first day in the lower market, the human began to visit more often. At first, he told himself it was only for spare parts, but even he knew that was not the real reason. Each time he walked through the narrow paths, he saw her before. She saw him. She always sat in the same place near the cracked wall. Her scrap pieces were still small and broken. No one stopped to buy them. But now, when she noticed his boots, her eyes lit up. You came back, she said one day, standing up quickly. I said I would, the human replied. She gave a small nod, as if that answer made perfect sense. He brought her food again. Not expensive meals. Just simple bread, warm soup, or fruit from the upper level. Each time she tried to eat slowly, like he had taught her. He also brought something else, a small blanket. The nights on Outpost 17 were very cold. The metal buildings held no heat. Wind moved through broken vents and open hallways. Many adults struggled with the cold. For a small child with no home, it was worse. When he handed her the folded blanket, she stared at it in shock. For sleeping, he explained. Her fingers touched the soft fabric carefully. It's clean, she said, almost afraid to use it. It's yours, he replied. She held it tightly to her chest. Days turned into weeks. The market workers began to notice the strange friendship. They whispered to each other. Why does the human waste time on her? She has no future. She is not even registered. The human ignored them. One afternoon, while sitting beside her stall, he asked again, Are you sure you don't have a name? She shook her head. Before, I was too small. Then my family was gone. No chip, no record, no name. She said it calmly, like she had accepted it long ago. The human looked at the busy market around them. So many voices, so many faces, so many registered lives. And yet, this small child was invisible. That's not right, he said quietly. She looked at him. Does it matter? He thought carefully before answering. Yes, he said. It matters. She waited. In my world, he continued, when someone is born, they are given a name. It means they belong. It means they are real. She looked down at her small hands. Am I not real? She asked softly. The question hit him harder than he expected. He leaned forward slightly. You are very real. She studied his face, searching for signs of a lie. She found none. After a long silence, he said, If you don't have a name, maybe we can choose one. Her eyes widened. Choose. Yes. A name is a gift. We can pick one together. She had never been given a choice before. The idea felt strange and exciting at the same time. What kind of name? She asked. The human smiled slightly. A simple one. A strong one. He looked at the sky for a moment, thinking, Lena, he said, finally. She repeated it slowly. Nah. He nodded. It means light. Her eyes grew brighter. Light? She asked. Yes. Even a small light can shine in a dark place. She held the word carefully, like it was fragile. Lena, she whispered again, testing how it felt. A small smile slowly appeared on her face. It was shy at first, then wider. "That is me," she asked. "If you want it to be?" She stood up straight, holding the blanket around her shoulders. Like a cape, "I am Lena," she said softly. For the first time, she did not look invisible. The next day, the human brought something small from his workshop. It was a thin piece of metal, polished and smooth. He had carved one word into it: Lena. He tied it to a simple string and handed it to her. She stared at the letters. "That is my name?" she asked. "Yes." She touched the metal tag gently. Then she placed it around her neck. The metal rested against her chest. She smiled in a way he had never seen before. From that day on, whenever someone asked who she was, she stood a little taller. "My name is Lena," she would say. Some workers ignored her, some laughed. But it did not matter as much anymore, because now, at least one person would always remember it. And for the first time in her short life, the forgotten child of the lower market had something that no system could erase. She had a name. One evening, the human walked through the lower market as usual. The lights above flickered. The air felt colder than normal. Workers were closing their stalls early because a dust storm warning had been announced. He looked toward the cracked wall. The small cloth was there. The scrap pieces were there. But Lena was not. He stopped walking. His eyes searched the area carefully. Maybe she was buying water. Maybe she was hiding from the wind. He waited. 5 minutes passed. 10 minutes. She never missed a day. Before a strange feeling grew in his chest, he walked to a nearby trader. "Have you seen Lena?" he asked. The trader shrugged. "The small blue one? She was here this morning." "Where did she go?" Another shrug. "Who knows? These street kids move around." The human did not like that answer. He began searching the lower levels of the station. The metal halls were narrow and dark. Pipes ran along the ceiling. Steam escaped from broken vents. "Lena," he called softly. No answer. He checked behind. Storage crates. He checked near the water station. Nothing. The storm outside began to hit the outer walls. The wind howled loudly. Dust tapped against the metal like rain. Finally, in a small alley behind an old supply building, he saw a shape on the ground. Small, still he ran. Lena was lying against the wall. Her blanket was wrapped around her, but it was thin protection against the cold. Her skin looked pale. Her breathing was shallow and weak. "Lena," he said, kneeling beside her. Her eyes opened slowly. For a second, she looked confused. Then she recognized him. "You came," she whispered. "Of course I came," he said gently. He touched her forehead. She was burning with fever. "How long have you been here?" he asked. She tried to speak, but her voice shook. "Since morning." "Why didn't you go inside?" She gave a weak smile. "They don't let me." His jaw tightened. He lifted her carefully into his arms. She felt lighter than before. "Light. I'm taking you to the clinic," he said. Her fingers weakly held onto his jacket. The medical center was on the upper level of the station. Bright lights, clean floors, cold white walls. He rushed inside. A medical drone floated toward him. "State identification," the machine said. "She's sick," he replied quickly. "High fever, severe weakness." "Identification required," the drone repeated. "She doesn't have one," he said, louder now. "Just treat her." The drone's light blinked. "Unregistered life form. No medical clearance. Treatment denied." The words felt like ice. The human stared at the machine in disbelief. "She's a child." "Treatment denied," the drone repeated calmly. Other workers in the clinic looked over but quickly looked away. No one stepped forward. The human's hands shook slightly as he held her. "There must be something you can do," he said. "Rules are clear," the drone answered. Lena's breathing became weaker. She opened her eyes again and looked at him. "It's okay," she whispered. "No," he said quickly. "It's not okay." She tried to smile. "You said I am real." "You are," he answered firmly. Her small hand touched the metal tag around her neck. "Will you remember me?" she asked softly. The question broke something inside him. He swallowed hard. "Yes," he said. "Always." She seemed calm after hearing that. Her breathing slowed. The clinic was quiet, except for the low hum of machines. "Stay with me, Lena," he whispered. Her eyes slowly closed. Her hand fell still. The human waited. He listened for another breath. Another. Small movement, but there was nothing. The medical drone scanned her. Life signs ended. It said flatly. The human stood there in silence. Around him, the clinic continued working like nothing had happened. Screens blinked. Machines beeped. Workers walked past. Just another unregistered death. Just another forgotten life. The drone spoke again. "Body will be transferred to disposal." The human stepped back. "No," he said quietly. "Disposal required under station law." He looked down at her small face. Her metal name tag rested against her. Chess.Lena. She had a name. She was real. He tightened his grip gently. "I'll take her," he said. Unauthorized action, the drone began. But he was already walking away. The storm outside was stronger now. The wind screamed across the station walls. He held her close as he stepped into the cold night. Dust hit his face. But he did not stop walking, and in his heart, one decision became clear. If the system would not. The storm had grown stronger by the time the human reached the edge of the station. Dust moved across the ground like waves in a gray ocean. The wind pushed hard against his back, but he did not slow down. In his arms, Lena felt light and still. Too still. The outer gates of Outpost 17 were not meant for funerals. They were made for cargo trucks and mining vehicles. Bright security lights shone down on the empty land beyond. A security officer stepped forward when he saw the human. "Stop. State your purpose." The human adjusted his grip slightly. "I'm leaving the station," he replied. The officer looked at the small wrapped body in his arms. "Disposal services will handle that," the officer said. "She is not waste," the human answered calmly. The officer frowned. "Station law says unregistered bodies must be processed. No burial allowed outside approved zones." The human's eyes were tired, but steady. "Then I'll find a place that isn't yours." For a moment, the officer did not know how to respond. Humans were not easy to argue with when they spoke like that. The storm alarm sounded, again in the distance. "It's dangerous out there," the officer said. "I know." Without waiting for permission, the human walked past the gate. The officer hesitated, then stepped aside. Outside the station walls, the planet was empty and silent. No tall buildings, no machines. Just dust and rock under a pale sky. The wind howled around him, pulling at his jacket and the white cloth wrapped around Lena. He walked far enough so the station lights looked small behind him. Finally, he stopped. He looked down at the ground. It was hard and dry. Not easy to dig. For a few seconds, he simply stood there. He remembered the first day he saw her, sitting beside broken scrap, trying to survive. No one looking at her. He remembered her small smile. When she said her new name, "I am Lena." He knelt slowly. With his hands, he began to clear the dust away. Then he used a small tool from his belt to break the hard ground. The work was slow. The wind pushed against him again and again. Dust filled his hair and covered his sleeves. But he kept digging. Back inside the station, word began to spread. The human took the body. He went outside the walls for burial. Some workers were confused. Some were curious. One older alien, the same one who had spoken earlier at the market, walked to the outer viewing window. He looked out into the storm. Through the dust, he could see a small shape in the distance. The human dot digging. Double quotes, why? A younger worker asked beside him. The older alien did not answer right away. I do not know. He finally said, outside, the hole slowly became deeper. The human stopped only to catch his breath. His hands were sore. His muscles ached. But he did not complain. When the grave was deep enough, he climbed out carefully. He knelt beside Lena's small body. The storm felt quieter now. Even though it was still loud, he brushed the dust off the white cloth. His hands moved gently. Full of care, he untied the string around her neck and held the metal tag for a moment. Lena, the letters were simple, not official, not recorded in any system, but real. He placed the tag back against her chest. You had a name, he said softly, and you mattered. The wind carried his words away. He lowered her slowly into the grave. For a moment, he stayed there, kneeling beside the open earth. No machines, no ceremony, no official record. Just him and her. Back at the station window, more workers had gathered. They watched in silence. No, one laughed. Now no one called it a waste of time. The older alien felt something strange inside his chest. A feeling he could not fully understand. Outside, the human picked up a handful of dirt. He paused, then he let it fall gently into the grave. The first sound of earth hitting cloth was soft, but it felt louder than the storm. And in that moment, his decision was complete. If the galaxy would not give her dignity, he would. The storm slowly began to calm. The wind was still strong, but the heavy dust clouds were fading. The sky above Outpost 17 looked pale and empty again. The human stood beside the small grave. The earth was freshly turned. The ground looked darker where he had placed the soil. Back carefully, layer by layer. He had worked slowly, making sure the grave was smooth and even. He did not rush. When the grave was fully covered, he pressed the soil down gently with his hands. Then he searched the ground nearby and found a flat piece of stone. It was not perfect. It was cracked on one side, but it was strong enough to stand upright. He pushed it into the soil at the head of the grave. For a moment, he just looked at it. It was empty. No record, no official number, no code. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small carving tool. Kneeling again, he began to carve. The metal tool scratched slowly against the stone. The sound was soft but clear. Lina, each letter was simple. Each letter was real. While he worked, he did not notice that he was no longer alone. At the edge of the station walls, a small group of aliens had gathered. They stood quietly, watching from a distance. The older alien stepped forward first. He walked slowly across the dust, stopping a few meters away from the human. "You are still here," he said. The human looked up briefly. Yes. The alien studied the grave. "It is only one small life," he said carefully. The human returned to carving the final letter. "One small life is still a life," he replied. The alien had no quick answer for that. More workers approached, standing behind the older alien. None of them spoke loudly. The mood was different now. The usual noise and sarcasm were gone. The human finished carving the name. He brushed the loose dust off the stone. Lena, he placed his hand on the top of the grave for a moment. "She was cold most nights," he said quietly. not looking at anyone. She was hungry, she was scared, but she still smiled. The younger alien from the station spoke up. "Why does that matter now?" "She is gone." The human stood slowly. "It matters because she was here," he said. The simple answer hung in the air. The older alien stepped closer to the grave. He looked down at the carved name. "There is no record of her," he said. "No data file, no history." The human nodded. "Then this is her record." The alien looked confused. "A stone." "A memory," the human corrected gently. Silence fell again. The wind moved lightly across the small grave, but the stone remained standing. One of the workers shifted uncomfortably. "In our system," he said, "only registered citizens receive burial space." The human met his eyes. "Then maybe your system is wrong." No one had spoken like that before, not here. The older alien felt something change inside him. He remembered the small blue girl sitting near the cracked wall. He remembered walking past her many times. He had never once stopped. He looked at the grave again. "On your world," he asked slowly, "do you bury all your dead?" The human thought for a moment. "Yes," he said. "Even the poor. Even the unknown. We say goodbye." "Why?" "Because it reminds us that life is important." The younger alien looked down at his own hands. No machine had paused when Lena died. No alarm had sounded. No message had been sent. But here, in the quiet dust, something felt important. One by one, the aliens stepped closer. No one laughed. No one called it useless. The human picked up the small metal tag from his pocket. He had removed it before covering the grave. He looked at it for a long second. Then he tied it gently around the stone marker. The tag moved slightly in the wind, reflecting a small piece of light. "She had a name," he said softly. The older alien spoke again. "You gave it to her." "Yes." "Why?" The human looked at the grave. "Because no one else did." The words were not angry. They were not loud. But they carried weight. For the first time, the aliens of Outpost 17 did not see a strange human digging in the dirt. They saw someone protecting something invisible. Dignity, memory, respect. The older alien slowly removed a small metal badge from his uniform. It was not valuable, but it was personal. Without speaking, he placed it gently at the base of the grave. The younger alien watched, surprised. "Why are you doing that?" he asked. The older alien answered quietly, "Because someone should." The human looked at him. Their eyes met for a brief moment. And in that silent exchange, something began to change on that cold, forgotten planet. The smallest grave on Outpost 17 was The small grave stood quietly outside the walls of Outpost-17. The storm had passed. The sky was pale and still. Dust no longer moved across the ground. The air felt calm, almost peaceful. The human returned to the grave the next morning. He expected. It too looked the same as before, but it dinned single quotes at the base of the stone marker. The older alien's metal badge was still there. Next to it was something new, a small, glowing crystal. The kind used in old navigation tools. Someone had placed it there during the night. The human looked. Around, no one was near. He knelt beside the grave and touched the stone gently. The carved name was still clear. "Lena." He stood up and turned toward the station. From the main gate, its workers were walking slowly toward him. One carried a small metal flower. The other held a simple light stick. They stopped near the grave and placed their items. Beside the stone, neither of them said a word. Then they walked back to the station. The human watched them go. Later that day, more workers came. Some left small objects, a broken coin, a tool piece, a strip of colored cloth, a tiny light orb. Each item was simple, but each one meant something. The small grave slowly became surrounded by these quiet gifts inside the station. People were talking. Did you see the human's grave? Someone left a crystal there. I heard 3 workers visited this morning. The story spread from one level to another. Even the upper management heard about it. In a small meeting room, several officials watched security footage of the human digging the grave. The video was silent, but the meaning was clear. One official crossed his arms. He broke protocol. He said. Another shook her head. He honored a child. There are rules for a reason. And maybe the rules need to change, she replied calmly. Back near the grave, the human was not alone anymore. A small alien child stood a few steps away. Looking at the stone, he was young, with bright green skin and wide, curious eyes. He pointed at the carved name, who was Lena. He asked. The human knelt down beside him. She was a friend. He said. The child looked at the small gifts around the grave. Why are there so many things here? Because people are starting to remember her. The child thought for a moment. She'll do something important. The human looked at the stone again. Yes, he said. She reminded us what it means to care. The child looked confused. She was just a small girl, right? Yes. Then why did you build her a grave? The human gave a soft smile. Because every life deserves to be remembered. The child nodded slowly, trying to understand. Later, that week, a new message appeared across the station network. Notice: updated protocol. All station residents, registered or unregistered, would now receive a basic identity record. No body would be disposed of without a name or marker. A small memorial zone would be built outside the station walls. The announcement surprised everyone. Workers gathered in the halls, reading the message again and again. Did this happen because of the human? Because of the small grave? Because of Lena? No one knew the full answer, but deep down, they all understood. Something had changed. A few days later, construction began near the grave. Workers carefully marked a small area around it. They built simple stone markers in neat rows. The human watched from a distance. The older alien walked up. Beside him, it started with one grave, he said. The human nodded. That was enough. The alien looked at the small stone with a carved name. It is strange, he admitted. One small life. And now the whole station is different. The human folded his arms. Sometimes the smallest lights are the ones people notice the most. The older alien looked at him. On your world, is this normal? The human smiled slightly. Not always. I try. The wind moved softly across the desert. The metal tag tied to the stone made a gentle, pew sound as it touched the rock. Lena, a name that had never existed in the system, a life that no one had recorded. Yet now, her grave had become the most important place on the entire outpost. And far beyond that small planet, the story of the human who refused to forget began to travel from ship to ship, from station to station. A simple story about a tiny grave, and the human who believed that every life